Okay, uh, our second question with Mayor McConnell. And again, thank you, Mayor McConnell, for sitting down and taking the time to answer my questions and to get the message out to the Vallejo community, which I believe is super important because we just saw something happen. Our city manager has resigned due to the public not wanting him around, and I think it's a big applaud. Like, I want to just applaud the people on our social media platforms: Vallejo Community, Vallejo Happenings, Vallejo City Politics, Open Vallejo. I mean, all of these platforms came together to um, expose what they felt was wrong, and this person left. And I don't want to harp on the past, and we're gonna, who may the last city manager, may his life be successful and whatever. But now we're looking to the future now. And I think what happened with our last city manager, and I wonder if you agree, is sending a message to any future city managers, any city councils or mayors, that the people of Vallejo are connected, and they're not to be messed around. And so I don't know if you feel that way yourself. And then my question really is what makes a good quality city manager?
Well, a good city manager is probably more of an artist than a structured application process. You can be educated in city management, as I was, um, but those are educational, academic pursuits. There's also the art of having been experienced in it. Um, at one time, city managers usually were trained as engineers because they knew how the streets worked and the sewer system ran. We've gotten past that because now we have to deal with finance and budgeting and personnel issues and labor unions and you name it. I mean, a city manager is really a wide generalist. And it's a lot of art and a lot of luck in choosing somebody who's going to be a match for a city. It's kind of like getting married. You hope for the best, and sometimes it's wonderful, and sometimes there needs to be a divorce. But you never know until you get there. Um, we're still looking at how we're going to go about finding our next city manager, and the city council has not yet had an opportunity to even express the first idea about it. There seems to be some thought that, oh, maybe we'll have a city council meeting, and well, that's a Tuesday night. By the time we get to it, as action item 9.3 or whatever it is, 9C or whatever it happens to be, it'll be 9:30 or 10 or 11 o'clock at night on a Tuesday evening when people have to work the next day. There's been some talk of maybe we need to have a town hall. There's a whole lot of ideas being thrown around, but what we really need to do is hear from the people, because Vallejo needs to have an involved populace. And as we move more into district elections, I think that will become possible. One time, elected officials learned what the public tenor was by talking with people in authoritarian positions, maybe reading a newspaper or listening to the radio. Then television came along, and now we have this social media and a whole lot of other types of social media. So perhaps one of the things that the social media needs to start doing is chiming in on what they want to see in a city manager and how they want to see that city manager selected, and how that city manager relationship should play out with not only the city council, because that's defined by the charter right now, but also with the public. Um, City management form of government came about many years ago because part-time elected officials didn't have the skills to run a municipal organization and everything that goes into it: police, fire, streets, sewers, recreation districts, you name it. Now we got labor laws and more coming down the pike. We are moving more and more into regional government these days. But the reality is that maybe we need to take a look at tweaking that relationship. Part of the difficulty many cities, particularly mid-sized cities like Vallejo is, we're 125,000 people, is that city council members work their tail off. On an average, they're on 17 boards and commissions apiece. As a mayor, I'm on 22 right now. I spent a lot of time dealing with county supervisors, regional officers, specialized boards, transportation issues, air quality issues. I mean, a lot of things that you don't hear on Tuesday night. And one of the shortcomings of being on a city council is that unless you're retired or you're independently wealthy, you get people who, quite honestly, can't afford to be on a city council. And we have a few of them right now. There probably needs to be a very open and honest discussion in the public about how much are you willing to pay for a city council person. We pay police officers and fire officials and medics and city managers and people who repair our streets what we pay them. We don't pay our city council people even minimal wage when you look at the hours they put in. It's a joke. I mean, I don't know if it's ever been said it's a violation of the Fair Standards Act, but it probably is. We don't pay them. And on top of that, we ask them to drive their own cars and use their own gasoline and use their own printers and their own phones and everything else under the sun. It's public service in the sense of sacrificing. And when you get down to people who can be in a position to do that, especially in a city like Vallejo, you don't have a whole lot of choices. And maybe the public needs to have an honest, open discussion about whether or not they want to change that. City of Richmond, City of Berkeley, that are comparable in our sizes, not their tax base, but our sizes, all pay their city council people and their mayors a lot more than they do here in the city of Vallejo. And sometimes you get what you get, right? I don't know if the public wants to do that, and I don't know how we would fund it, but maybe we would start having different people applying and we would have a different mentality. I'm hoping district elections is going to address that. That's a big part of our city manager, city council form of government, because by having city district elected, we're going to have a more local concentration, I think, than we have before. And people in that district might start paying attention to what their district person does, who they are, how they do it, what they think, what their values are. And you might finally start seeing more interaction. We're halfway through that process now. We'll see the second half in November of 2022. And people are starting to line up already to figure out who they're going to run for and what district. But more than ever before, the people in Vallejo need to start to be participants in the city of Vallejo. And I know it's tough because I commuted for years and years. By the time you work 8 to 12 hours or more hours per day on your job, and you add in an hour to 2 or more commuting each way, that doesn't leave a whole lot of time left over to become civically involved. And gosh knows, we need to have civic involvement, or as one political philosopher once said, very disdainfully, you get what you deserve in a democracy. And that was a belittlement. It was a slam, because the point was, if you don't get involved in a democracy, you get run over, and you probably won't like what you get. So when you come back to the city manager in a city of Vallejo, 125,000 people and growing, you've got to have a really unique, qualified, gifted, dedicated person. And that's not an easy thing. I mean, that is tough. That's a tough job. No matter what you do, it's tough. You got 7 people that are your employers, and you might have to pay attention to 4 of them on a council, if that's the majority, and the other 3 can maybe take a hike. Or maybe you're smart enough to say, well, we can't do what you guys want as a minority, so we'll give you this and we'll give you that there. But, that's an artist. It's like blending colors on a painting. And are you going to have an impressionist? Are you going to have a real life? Or are you going to have a modernistic version? Because a city manager has to be as much of an artist as they are a manager, maybe more. So the people who are on council today really need to hear from our citizens how they want to make their government work, what they want to do with their council people, whether they want to have full-time people like they have in Berkeley and Richmond and pay for them, how they want to see the city manager work, how they want to see their city council agendas run. Because let's face it, when we have to go from 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon after having worked a full-time job already until 11, 12, 1 o'clock, 1:30. We've been there until almost 1:45, and some cities go later. What do you get? I mean, how much fortitude do you want to have a city council have? And how much willingness are you going to pitch in to help them do their job? That's a challenge. And I don't know who's up to it, but it better be met, because we won't like the results otherwise if it doesn't get met.
Mr. McConnell, sitting here always with you, I learn always a lot. And you make a great point is we don't have anybody fully committed, enough people, especially in our city management, fully committed or able to be fully committed to bettering the city. I mean, you totally, in my mind and opinion, makes sense that how are we going to get things done when you're asking too much out of one person, that's to have 7 people to sit there and make the decisions for 125,000 people. That's a pretty huge task to ask somebody, especially when they're not able to fully commit to them mentally, physically, especially like you were saying, after you get done with a hard day of work, then you come try to do your duty to help your community. But that's a lot to ask out of somebody when they just can't fully commit. I mean, I think you make a great point on that. And I think that's a question that our Vallejo residents need to ask themselves, is that, hey, our mayor's telling us is that we don't have people that are able, not because they don't want to, it's just they can't physically commit. And maybe it's time that we invest in having a city council that could completely put all of their time into bettering our city. Is that kind of the point you're kind of making, or am I?
That's definitely a point. I wouldn't say that we don't have council people that fully commit, because I believe that they do. Each and every one of the 7 people on that council are fully committed to making this city work as best as it possibly can be done. But there are limitations of human time and spirit. And let's face it, we still have our own lives we need to lead, and we still have to pay our mortgages and our utility bills and keep the car insured and put gas in the tank and things like that. We don't have any type of stipend for gas as they do at the county level. We have a city of 125,000. There are about 20,000 people in each district. But look at the state assembly districts and the state senate district. Senator Dodd's got like 950,000 people in his district. That's a lot. And I mean, you don't get to see him as often as you see council people, but you still see him. Look at Congressman Thompson. I don't know how many people are in his district, but there's a huge number of people. It goes from all the way from Martinez up to the other side of Lake County. We're asking an awful lot from our elected legislators, whether they're at the city level, the county level, the state level, the federal level. That's a huge undertaking. And maybe it's time we ask ourselves as a society, how much are we willing to pay for good governance? Because I submit to you that at least in that area, as compared to employees who work full-time for a jurisdiction, we're not even coming close. Nowhere close. I mean, let's face it. You can make a whole lot more money in private industry than you can by being hired by the government as a legislator or an elected official. Plus, we expect them to run and pay for a campaign every 2 to 4 to 6 years or whatever it happens to be that you're running for. Maybe it's time we took our 18th century model and looked at how we do it in the 21st century.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because things are starting to show the strain of the system. I mean, we have the Brown Act, which was passed in the 60s or something like that to prevent the backroom deals. And that's very well intended. But now, depending upon what legislative body you're at the county or below level, they don't have the state, you notice, or the federal government, we're limited in how many people we can talk to outside of the formal meeting. And that means for city council in Vallejo, we get to talk to 2 other people maximum. If you're on a 5-member board, like the school board, or a general law city like American Canyon or Benicia, you get to talk to 1 other elected official outside of the meeting. And then you come into this meeting, which starts at 7 o'clock, plus all the closed sessions, plus all the boards and all the special districts that go before 7 o'clock. And you have community forum, consent item, and presentations, and awards, and proclamations, and consent items, and action items, and public calendar, and information items, and comments by council members, and reports by city managers, and reports by city attorneys. Why is it we're not getting through our meetings faster than 5 and 6 and 7 hours? Geez, maybe there's a reason, huh? So how much creativity and thought process can really go into this process? We get packets that are written by staff. Those packets are 800 and 900 pages long. And sitting on other boards and commissions, as every council member does, and in my case was even more. How many packets do you think I have to read every month, every week, or everybody else on council for that matter? And I speed read, fortunately, but even that's not enough anymore. So maybe it's time we start thinking about how we're running local government, because it's starting to break apart at the seams because of the pressure. And God bless people who are willing to run for those local positions, especially if they want to help out the city where they live. But it's time to rethink this process. And hopefully that's where social media will come in. I know there are 10, 15, 20 social media groups here in town of you name it, their area of interest. Maybe we need to get the administrators all together and start that conversation so that we can actually hear people who cannot come to a Tuesday night meeting because they get up and go to work at 3 or 4 in the morning, or a Saturday where you're sandwiched in between yard work and running your honey-do lists and other things like that, which is where I'm supposed to be now. We need to start rethinking this process because it's not holding up, and it's going to get worse as our population. I mean, look at California. We have over 40 million people in this state. And I don't know how many cities we have here, but they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Even Vallejo's growing. We're 125,000 people today. What are we going to be in 2030, 2040, 2050? We're going to hit 175,000 people? And we're still going to ask 7 people to do this on basically a volunteer basis? We got to start thinking about this. And it's time that the people who are going to be most impacted by this, who are now in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, start thinking about it and start having these dialogues and start having these honest discussions. Not the name throwing, not the detailing of the problems, because, well, believe me, we all know what the problems are. We need solutions. We need creative thoughts. We need ideas that will be feasible, they'll work. And we have to get that from the populace. Because otherwise you're handing it off to 7 people and say, you guys take care of it, it's all yours, goodbye. It's not working anymore, folks.
No, I agree with you on that. That's pretty eye-opening. And that's why I like sitting down here with you, Mr. McConnell. You definitely, I guess, expose, or for myself, enlighten me in like how much difficult it is that is placed on the city council. And some people are like, oh, what's going on in city council? They're all incompetent. But then when you sit here and you listen how much is on the table for people that are basically volunteering themselves, I mean, I think maybe like what you just said right now gives me a more respect on those city council meetings, because I see you guys and your faces and you're like just drained and tired, and even being someone that's listening, I'm just like this is nothing's gonna get done, and it's just nice to hear that you're saying the same thing, like, hey, we gotta make a change. This system is outdated and our populations are outgrowing it.
And our demands are outstripping it. I woke up at 3:30 this morning thinking, my God, what if there's a natural disaster and none of our professional staff live in this city? Most of them live elsewhere. They couldn't get here because Highway 37 is liquefied, or the Carquinez Bridge is down. You know, what am I going to do? I'm the mayor, right? I'm supposed to know how to run the city, but I don't have the authority. All I can do is go ask, because the charter doesn't give that to us. And I'm not saying we're going to go to a strong mayor system. I don't necessarily think that's the answer either. But I do think there need to be some adjustments made. And before we jump to anything, we need to have a long, honest, open, non-accusatory discussion about these changes that are needed throughout this state.
Well, we'll finish on that, Mr. McConnell. I always thank you for your time, and I think not only I, but our Vallejo residents appreciate your willingness to put yourself in front of a camera to communicate with us. And I appreciate everything you're trying to do, and I want everybody. I want to be a part of the media that helps it to help bring you to the light. That's like, look, we do have a mayor that is willing to do whatever it takes to better this city, and I think one part of it is communication, and you've always been a big supporter of that, and I really do thank you and appreciate your time.
I appreciate your kind words, and I want you and everybody else to recognize that democracy is not a participatory sport. It's an involvement sport. You got to get on the field, and what's more, it's a contact sport. You're going to take your lumps and bumps and bruises and hurts and broken bones. But if it doesn't get played that way, we are not going to like the final score.
On that, we'll finish up. Thank you, Mr. McConnell.
Thank you, too. Have a great day, everybody.